Hey everybody, great news. It's BJ Fogg from Stanford. Changing behavior is easier than you think. There's a systematic way to approach it. I'm the author of Tiny Habits. I teach behavior design, and I'm going to give you the 2 ways to change your behavior in the long term. There's only 2 ways, okay? And you can forget about so much that you heard about behavior change and those myths. You've got 2 approaches. Number 1 is to take baby steps and create habits. So I've created the Tiny Habits method. I have some awesome coaches that teach and coach using the Tiny Habits method. That is a great way to create lasting change, in part because it doesn't rely on you having high levels of motivation. Forget the idea that you're going to have high levels of motivation as you change your behavior over the long term. Motivation goes up and down over time. And so if we want to take the reality of human nature and human psychology into account, it means you can't rely on high levels of motivation. So boom, you've got the Tiny Habits method to help you. You don't need lots of motivation or willpower. It works without that. That's way number 1. Way number 2 is to change your environment, redesign your environment or your context. If you can redesign your environment so behaviors are easy to do, the good behaviors that you want, then you don't have to rely on tons of motivation. And these 2 approaches work together. And let me draw out a diagram to give you a sense of how this works. Really what you want to do when you're designing for lasting change, you want to use both a small steps method like Tiny Habits and change your environment, and they work together. What they have in common is you don't have to worry too much about levels of motivation, right? So if you use, let's just say Tiny Habits, so a small change method, that what you want to do when you redesign your environment, I'll just put Delta environment here. You want to redesign your environment so the habits are really, really easy to do. So say, for example, if you want to drink more water, redesign your environment so you have water at the ready. If you want to exercise more, change your environment so it's really easy to get started. It's a baby step. And then as you do these habits, these behaviors, tweak your environment little by little. So what you're doing is you're redesigning and redesigning here, environment. Oh, adding an N to environment, like it should have. Thank you very much. That was not intentional. But the point here is you won't be perfect as you do this. It's a process, and you revise as you go along. So redesign your environment to make the good behaviors super easy to do, and the behaviors you don't want, make them hard to do. And use the Tiny Habits method to inform, how do I make this habit easier to do? So there you have it. There's only 2 ways to change your behavior in the long term. It's a small steps approach, in this case, Tiny Habits, and redesigning your environment. Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. We can talk about that or anything else that you want to talk about. Some of you are new here. I'm so glad you are here. Most of you have been here before. You know how it works. Raise your hand and ask questions, type it into the chat bar, or you can just go off mute and ask. What should we talk about today? All right, Mary, hello.
Hey, well, so first of all, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think those are the only 2 ways. Okay. And, and which is, it's an interesting thing to talk about, because the other thing that I do besides Tiny Habits is, to me, the 3rd way to change behavior. And it's, which is basically healing trauma. And what I'm looking at the behavior equation, for me, when you focus on motivation, why am I not motivated to do this? There's all kinds of unconscious reasons. Or if it feels like I'm not able to do this, my ability level, you can change that by healing trauma. And that impacts the equation. So, I mean, it may be that what I'm talking about fits into one of your 2 ways, but I don't think so. And so anyway, I'm just, and we're not here to talk about trauma healing, but yeah. I mean, it's absolutely astounding if you actually get your unconscious on board, and the reasons that it's stuck in survival mode, hell no, I'm not going to go there, which is sometimes, kind of like what our unconscious says. It absolutely transforms your behavior. So just curious about your thoughts on that.
I love this comment, and Mary, before in the previous office hours, I love, to be pushed and challenged and so on. And I don't think we entirely disagree. I mean, I'm not an expert on dealing with the trauma, but I would imagine you could see that as an internal environment. So
yes.
Mary, probably what you and others do, or what you're doing, is you're helping change that internal environment. And the way I might segment it out in terms of this model of these two ways, are you doing it in a dramatic session, like somebody might redesign the room, or does it happen little by little in more of a small steps approach? And it might be both. I don't know your methods, but I'd probably, like you acknowledged in the comment, is it could probably fit in one or the other. But when I look at environment in my book, I call it context. So PAC person is PAC, but we're talking about it is the people around you. It is the built environment around you. It's the objects around you, but it's also the perception of what's going on. So, perception, a change in perception changes your environment, even if the people around you don't change or the built, you're perceiving it differently. And so in this case, it's probably a perception or how you're dealing with something internal. Mary, I'll say one more thing and I'll back to you. Last week, I spoke at an event just after Gabor Mate. So he was kind of laying the foundation.
Yeah.
And then I spoke about relationships and connections and how to, some research I'm doing at Stanford around that. And it was 2017 when he spoke previously at the event, and which totally opened my eyes. Like you're discovering, right? Where people really have such a negative view about people who struggle with addiction, and they haven't really looked at the role of trauma. And then it took me it wasn't like instant, but over time, it's like, oh my gosh, that's the key that unlocks it. So I'm so glad that you're bringing Tiny Habits to your expertise in helping people with trauma.
Yeah, so the thing that you said that I really, really love is exactly, it can be both. So one of the things, there's a super simple technique, something called 1-point tapping, 60 to 90 seconds, you can shift an emotion or heal it and let it go. And that's, and so I actually like to blend tiny habits with that. So that would be a tiny little baby step versus doing a huge regression and going back to some event really early in a person's life, healing all the trauma there, and it just transformed them. So that would be a big shift. So yeah, I can frame it that. I really like looking at that. And just quick, my favorite thing about environment has to do with flossing my teeth. I hated flossing my teeth until I started doing it in the shower. Oh my gosh, extra, I changed the environment. Yeah, so that's my favorite flossing teeth thing.
Well, Dr. Mary, this topic is so important and it's still being figured out, and hopefully with Dr. Gabor Mate's new book and so on, there's more and more awareness. How would you, if we did sort of a Tiny Habits backed session on tiny habits and trauma, are you good? If we haven't done that, are you good with doing something like that?
Oh, I would love that. In fact, I talked to Linda once and she said, oh, we're too busy right now. But I would love to do some research and actually do, if we take a Tiny Habits recipe and add a little tiny steps trauma, what I call silencing your gremlins, and put those together and see the difference it makes. Absolutely love that. And I know anyone on here who in another group, I said, I teach you how to clear beliefs. I got COVID, so I'm just coming back on board. So that's why nothing has happened there. But that's a similar thing is shifting and healing your beliefs. A simple way to do that.
I think this could be such a service to people around the world, and the right people to coordinate that are here. Yeah. So I'm on board, y'all. I say we should do something like that.
Yeah. So just let me know, chit chat, what that looks like. Okay. Whoever does that at your end, this is my gift I bring to the world that I'm all about, is teaching people how to heal little bits of trauma such at a time.
So I'm going to delegate to people here that are not me. What we might do is do a coach one, just coaches first, right? Because I mean, the more I
Yes.
learn about this, the more it's like, you know what, we've all had some type of trauma, and you may not realize or recognize it. It may take a while to go, oh my gosh, that is impacting. And so maybe we also just do a special coach one.
Yeah, you have no idea. And I like to differentiate trauma with a big T, which is like I was sexually abused or was in a horrific accident, versus trauma with a little t. And talking about big trauma, so everyone here has a huge trauma. You were born. I mean, birth is the biggest trauma that any of us go through. So sorry, y'all got trauma.
Yeah.
But okay, so whoever wants to do that,
Okay.
I'm on board. Love it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, Pam, let's go to you.
Hey, so this is a fabulous conversation, and I'm thinking now about looking at changing your environment with perception. That's we haven't really thought about that. But anyway, so my question is, I'm doing a big talk this weekend. I'm excited. I've narrowed your brilliant process down to like 25 slides, and I'm hoping that'll do it. But I have two questions. So, I'm going to actually do so the focus mapping, which is this, if you guys, I don't know if you can even see that. Yeah. I'm not going to do focus mapping. It's only an hour, right? So what I was going to do is I'm going to do the swarm of bees on a flip chart, and I'm going to have them do it with me. Like this will be like an activity during the workshop. And then this is what I was thinking about doing. And I think I remember you talking about this. So to do the focus mapping with just like circles and stars. So I was going to say, okay, on this list, what really calls to you? What do you really want to do and you think will be effective? So you circle it. And then what can you get yourself to do every day or however often you said you were going to do it? You believe you can do it and star it. So then that's your golden behaviors, right? I'm not missing anything. Is there anything else you would say?
Yeah. And I'd probably say it this way. So yes, I'm going to fine tune. So you're right. I'm going to fine tune.
That's what I'm looking for.
First is look at this list and which ones would have a lot of impact, and put a star by those. So impact is the star, and not whether you want to do it or you can, but just if you were to do it, so you really want to isolate the impact dimension.
Gotcha. Okay.
Have them put a star. I like, the cloud and the bees around it. I like that.
Me too.
And they have to have that worksheet, but it's okay just to list them. And then the next one is go back and circle the ones that you can get yourself to do. And the way I remember stars, the circle is like hugging it, like, oh, I can do this one, right? So that's how because I used to get the stars and circles confused.
Yeah.
I thought, well, how do I remember this? Oh, the ones I can do are like, yes, I'm embracing this one. So
embracing that one. And then where does want to come in?
It's in that second one, what you can get yourself to do, which is a function of your motivation to do it and your ability to do it. And so that's why it's phrased in that way. Yes, I can get myself to do this, which sounds simple and people understand that. But when you unpack it, and it took me years to come up with the phrasing, and it sounds dumb now, but it sounds weird now, but true. Yes, I can get myself to do this. If it's something very hard and I really want to do it, yes, I can get myself to do it, right? So some hard things will get circled because I really want to, motivation. So it can be difficult, but motivation's high. Or, oh, I don't really want it that much, but it's so easy to do. Yeah, I can get myself to do it. So that's why that phrasing accounts for both motivation and ability.
Perfect, because that crystallized it for me, because I felt like I was reading your book and I'm like, I was getting all over the place. So thank you for that simplification. One more question for you guys. I know in your TED Talk, you use dental floss. You gave everybody dental floss, right? So I can't afford to give everybody dental floss. I can't buy 200 dental floss. So I'm thinking, I want people to get up, and like you had people flossing their teeth. And I was thinking maybe the Maui habit. What habit do you think I could do to get people maybe out of their seat and doing something to experience a tiny habit and have fun?
I'll give two suggestions. One is normal and one is weird. The normal one is just stretch. During the day, you'll want to stretch. So here are 5 different stretches you can do. Pick the one you like.
Oh, I love that.
And then what's going to be the prompt or the anchor for stretching? Okay, everybody, let's practice it right now. So they get up and they stretch. So that one's pretty normal and straightforward. Yeah. The weird one I've always wanted to do and I haven't done.
Oh,
has to do with you have little bottles of lotion and they give themselves a hand massage, okay? Which I think would be really cool at a conference, but now with COVID and handshake, it's got a little weirder since then. So I do it with the stretching one probably, because it is physical and it's what you want, and everybody can benefit from a tiny habit of stretching.
Do you think doing the Maui habit, like having them pretend like they're getting out of bed and saying,
yeah, I've done that and it works well.
But you think the stretching would be better? Okay.
I think stretching is just easier to understand. The Maui habit layers in some other things. Yeah. And awesome. I did that in the TED Talk here in Maui, because at that moment I was naming that habit the Maui habit. And it was the moment where I'm saying, we're going to have a habit called the Maui habit. So that's why I did it in that context.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Great. Hi, Diana.
Oh, hi, BJ. Hi, everybody. Dr. Pellicer's topic, it got me thinking. I've done 3 trauma workshops in my life, like to heal my own traumas in my childhood. And the last one I did was more to heal my adult traumas. And I went to a place called the Meadows in Arizona, which is where Pia Melody was a nurse, and she came up with a model, and that she found helped a lot of the patients that were there for addiction issues and all. And anyway, one of the takeaways I thought would be helpful to share here is that they taught us there are 4 stages of recovery. And the first stage is like depression or addiction or whatever pathology somebody has. And phase 2 is setting boundaries, self-esteem. And phase 3 is trauma work. And in order to do trauma work, one has to have done at least a year of DBT therapy before one can even attempt it. Otherwise, it can be, one can be brought back to a childhood state and never get out of it again. And then stage 4 is advanced self-care and moderation. And I just wanted to share those 4 stages because I was thinking about ability and this whole environmental talk that you were just mentioning, that our ability to be able to heal trauma needs to be there, like through some basic stabilization. Like somebody in the first phase of recovery would not be able to jump to phase 3, if that makes any sense. And I just thought it was kind of nice to see the sort of clear delineation of where somebody might be on a path of recovery and where tiny habits might actually work, like in phase 2 and phase 4.
Interesting. Well, I don't have any, Diana, a smart reaction to that because I'm not an expert on trauma. But I guess my reaction is, it's a sophisticated area, and it's not like, a coach can just, read a paper in 30 minutes and be ready to do it. And so that's definitely a takeaway here. The other takeaway, building on what we said before, is, man, the world needs this. And if you can bring it to the world along with an effective method for creating habits like tiny habits, that's really important, and now maybe more than ever. You look at COVID, what's happened with kids and so on, and it's not like there's getting less trauma in the world. And social media and kids being bullied and shamed on social media. Wow, and I'm glad not everybody, I'm glad a good number of coaches are here to hear this. And I would be such a fan of having you who are trained in trauma use the tiny habits method to help people around the world. I think
I'm not trained in trauma, I'm a coach, but I am in long-term recovery from substance misuse, and also I'm a codependent in recovery, and I go to a lot of meetings, and I have been for the past year talking to some of my other people in the support groups and sort of talked about tiny habits with them, and they all do think that having tiny habits for certain things in recovery, like meditation, for maybe going to meetings, even like just get into a meeting, just show up. That's already like that could be a starter step, and once they're there, then I can leave.
At the event where Gabor Mate spoke before, I did by design, so then I could share some research we're doing at Stanford. the research has to do with helping people visualize and understand their connections, their relationships. Okay, so I don't have to know a lot about trauma or addiction, but it's like, how do you help people? And we can do this, and Linda and others will probably do this at a next coach training that I'm on. It's called Buddy Map, and you map it out. And even in like a 35-minute session, people have significant changes. We're not measuring trauma, but in terms of their sense of belonging, their confidence, their clarity on what they want, and so on. And so that's what I presented at the conference last week. And it's really, in some ways, it's going to the heart, at least in some views of addictive behaviors. Is, the phrase that inspired this is the opposite of addiction is connection. And so, and people at the event said this would be a great, I suggested we can use this as a diagnostic tool and a therapeutic tool. And we'll get to that probably Q3 of next year at Stanford. But other people said, my daughter's really going through a lot right now. I'd love to use this with her, and so on. So when we do the coach training and I share that, you may see some great ways to use it, or you may have application for it before we're able to tackle this in my Stanford lab. We don't have the right people in the team right now to go into trauma and addiction and whatever. We have the right people to do what we need to do for about the next 6 months. So stay tuned to that. So thank you. And Diana, thank you on that. And those of you who are in this space, I think in the chat bar, kind of throw in your hat. Or if you don't have any expertise really, but you're just interested, put in the chat bar. I mean, one of the good things about office hours is, yeah, we get to talk and I get to answer questions and try to help you, but you also get to know each other better. So use the chat bar, and that won't distract me because I mostly don't pay attention to it. Marta.
Hi, everyone. This is, I guess, less a question, but more a contribution to the trauma conversation. I have been using Tiny Habits very successfully in the sense that, I am not a trauma expert, but I've dealt with my own trauma from a major brain injury where my ability for certain elements of my life has been decreased, and my perception has been skewed in terms of how I interpret certain things that people say to me that I know they don't mean it in a certain way, but I perceive it in a certain way. So one of the things that I found incredibly helpful was using Tiny Habits to, and the tiny behavior is a relaxation response. So I'll use the person prompt, and when I become aware of that, I'll invoke the relaxation response, which makes me feel like I have an incredible amount of control and agency over my own life to put my physiological and mental state to change it entirely from high stress to low stress and in control. So that's been amazing, and a great thank you to BJ and Linda.
Well,
and a lot of
and Marta, I'm just kind of like a framework, and you plug in the content. Thank you for sharing that. What is the habit that you do to get the relaxation response?
So there are many ways to invoke the relaxation response. Tapping is one, meditation, mindfulness is another. I'm a little bit stuck on breath work to ensure that I'm transitioning my my autonomic nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic, and parasympathetic is the relaxation response. So I'll take a 4-count breath in and an 8-count breath out. And I, of course, celebrate every time to ensure that I look forward to that behavior next time. And I recognize that, oh my God, this helped me so much. This is at my fingertips. How amazing is that?
Wow, that's awesome. And then that builds confidence in other parts of your life and unlocks in other ways.
Absolutely.
I love that. Judy, let me get to you in a minute. Let me just comment on what Marta said or build a little bit. I've heard for years, breathing and relaxation, and have done that, but I didn't really become like a huge believer of it until I would say 6 months, maybe it was a little bit longer ago, recently, where I was really stressed and I could feel it through my body. And I was like, okay, deep breathe, just go into deep breathing. And you all, in like 90 seconds, the shift was really like, bam. I was just so dramatic, you know, and I'd done deep breathing before, but I guess I wasn't able to just identify how clear the shift was. But all it took was, I'm thinking about 90 seconds of some deep breathing where it was crystal clear that that was effective. So I became even a bigger fan of it, and still a student. I'm not an expert on it, but yeah, if you haven't, we've all tried it, but just remember, have this be the anchor. The next time you're really stressed and feeling it, start into some deep breathing, and then notice the shift that, for me, it happened pretty quickly. It was like, anyway, so, and then it does, I love what you said, Marta, about it giving you, well, you didn't say these words necessarily, but it's a superpower. And you know you have that resource, which then unlocks you in other ways, which is wonderful. So, hi, Judy, Dr. Judy.
Hey, everybody. I saw Beth on here, and some of you other coaches. I just want you to know how important it is when you're coaching in the 5-day program. I sent my class through this year, this last month and a half, and Beth, one of my students, had you as a coach. So I appreciate that. And what I ask my students, and I think it's important, and then it's a little bit of a celebration moment, I think. I have them write in a paragraph or more, tell me your overall impression of the 5-day program and the Tiny Habits method. And so I had this one student say, I liked that the coaches sent daily emails and asked about my progress. It was nice having a coach sending feedback and keeping me motivated. I especially liked my coach's assurance that even if I forgot a habit, it's all part of the process. And what's important is that I am practicing and learning what works best for me. Beth, that was one of the students in my class who took you as a coach. So I just want to give you, and I'll put this in the kudos email thing that we have, but some of you guys also coached my students. I had about 20 or 22. They all haven't finished it up yet. So just to know that I think that 5-day program is really valuable, and realize the work you do, it does make a difference for our students, for my students who are saying, another student wrote, I was really down and depressed and I'm having some anxiety issues. This was a great program for me to take. And I just have them do it. I call it a behavior design assignment. And so anyway, thank you, Beth, and thank all of the other coaches who have coached my students, but realize that's a really good tool that you can use in your coaching practice too, is just send them to the 5-day program as an additional. So yes. That's all, a little promo, but thank you, Beth.
Judy. Thank you so much.
Of course.
That's more response. Beth, any more response?
Oh, just thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I probably over work with them for being a free program, but it's I took a break because my mom was elderly, and she had, I've been with her, and then she passed away, so I've been away from it. So I'm a little over enthusiastic, but yeah, I love all of the habiteers, and just seeing them progress from Monday to Friday. It's amazing. And just helping them, really making it tiny, and going through just all of the different steps that they need to, learning how to celebrate and all of those, little things. So I appreciate that. Nice to get other feedback.
Well, and some of the other coaches also coach. So I'll put that in the kudos thing that we have and say thank you too, and I'll list all the coaches. So it's been great. Thank you, guys.
Just over 10 years that we've offered the 5-day Tiny Habits program, always for free. And so I really Judy, thank you for that. I mean, we have a weekly meeting around the 5-day program and how to improve it. And in that meeting, yes, we have all these like positive comments, but we tend to hone in on the negative ones and try to fix the problems. And so if you do that week after week, where we don't really look at all the positive stuff because we're trying to get it better, it can make you go, oh my gosh, you know. But it's great to step back and go, in 5 days, you can significantly help people in just in so little time. So Judy, thank you for sharing the experience of your students. And it is a note, I think, for those of us involved in the weekly 5-day program meeting, to not just like say, yeah, there's all the positive stuff. Let's focus on the 2 negative things, right? We gotta continue to go, yeah, we're doing a good thing in the world, but we want to make it better. Marta, I see your hand back up, and also Dr. Mary. Do you have follow-on comments?
I just have a short, and this has nothing to do with trauma. I don't know if you remember last time, BJ, I asked you about my little solitaire on the phone habit.
Yes, and I think I was a little bit cranky in answering you, and I felt so bad. Keep going.
It's okay. Well, you know, and it was like, yeah, okay, dopamine. And I started to pay attention. It's like, what did I feel like when I do this? And it doesn't feel like, I mean, I know what shine and celebration feels like. What I want is control. It's like if I'm stressed out, it's like, I know I can do this. And it feels like the sense of control. And so my question is there a different neurochemical or just what? Because I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm just, because it doesn't feel like shine.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Like I said last time, I'm not a neuroscientist and I don't want to like pretend like I am. So I tend to just look at what's the technique and what's happening, you know, just sort of the practical, maybe superficial aspects, but also the practical ones. The way I would see it as related to shine is the feeling of success. And if you feel like by doing this, I am now, you know, more successful in having control over what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean that shine I see is a very broad concept. It is just the feeling of success, whether that's, oh, it's reducing my pain, or whether it's like, oh, I see I'm progressing, or somebody's, you know, nodding, Mary is nodding, and Beth is nodding and smiling as I'm speaking. That gives me shine. And I think going from a state of feeling like you're in less control to more control, as long as you recognize that or feel it in some way, I would definitely call that shine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm just putting things together in my brain. So thank you for that. So I like that broader, because I always thought, oh, shine is just celebration and this little happy dopamine burst. Yeah. But I like that broader perspective that it's just however for you that feeling of success is. So awesome. Thank you.
You know, and in looking at that concept and using it practically for over 10 years in the Tiny Habits method and teaching it, and then when I really dug into what is the name of this emotion, this feeling, and there's just not a word for it. And I looked in other languages and called emotion experts that are academic colleagues. Oddly enough, the closest word is pride. And there's another one, satisfaction. Joy is a little out there, but it's different than pride. So, you know, the time was right to name it. And who knows if it will become a global and widely understood term apart from Tiny Habits. I hope so, right? Where it's like now people can talk about shine and they may not even know that it came from a method called Tiny Habits, and but we'll see. It is what Tiny Habits does fundamentally is it gives people hope. And Linda and I have been very clear on that for years. What are we doing with Tiny Habits? We're giving people hope. And that hope comes through seeing that they can change and seeing they can create the habits. But the hope also comes through the ability for people to feel shine, and feel shine on demand, or even shine that's not on demand, that they recognize that. So all of this is really in the service of more well-being and flourishing. But if you just had to say, what's the Tiny Habits method about? Guess what? It's not really about creating habits. Yeah, you create habits with it, It's really about bringing hope to people's lives and more hope into the world. And that's what we're doing, y'all. Okay, I think we went overtime, right? But totally worth it. Thank you, you guys, for these great questions. We'll see you again next time. It is so fun for me to join you on these, and keep on doing awesome things in the world. Let's bring more and more hope to people around us and people around the world.